You bring up owners, so I'm glad you did. We actually have some sound. This was Rich Cimini who's going to join us coming up at 10:30, and we can ask him more about this report. But this is on Rich's podcast, Flight Deck. Here's Rich talking about Woody Johnson and how he was, quote, pissed with how the Jets season ended.
Woody Johnson is committed to Aaron Glenn. Now, call him crazy, but that's the situation. I can tell you this. Johnson was not happy by the finish to the season, despite the circumstances. You had rookie quarterback, some injuries, evaluations, some quote-unquote tanking. He was not happy to see his team get blown out 5 times in a row in historic fashion. As you know, first team in NFL history to lose 5 straight by 23 or more points. That's incredible. Not even Kotite did that, not even Gase. And so Woody, from what I understand, didn't even go to the last 3 games, which is unlike him. So just because, he didn't fire Glenn does not mean he's happy. He was pissed.
Well, he should be pissed. I mean, every Jet fan should be pissed. I know I certainly am, as Mike, you're well aware. What do you make of those comments, though? You obviously know Woody as well as anyone we could bring on and have this conversation with. So what do you make of that from Rich Cimini?
Well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you got to go by his decision-making, right? And I really celebrate, what he's doing, which is he has a good long-term plan. And, again, we've talked about this now for the last several weeks. The irony is there would be such, bitching and complaining if the team won 6 games and they, traded for a lot of middling veteran players who just got hurt and pissed away money and cap space and didn't have it for the future, and all the feedback would be like there's no long-term plan, they're not trying to do it right, they're putting a Band-Aid on it, they're reactionary, they're fine being average. So now you have 2 guys in Aaron Glenn and Daramuji who are really smart, thoughtful guys who are trying to build a great long-term team by taking it down to the studs and have put themselves in a historically great position for the offseason with a head coach who is smart and is holding people accountable, including himself, by already admitting that he's going to make some changes. To me, that's exactly what you want after year 1. And again, it didn't matter how many games they won. It's matter that they have a plan and you have an owner who's supporting them. So it's exactly what you'd want if you're a Jet fan. What it really requires is a little bit of patience, which nobody has in 2026. And it's going to play out. And in March and April, the team's going to look different. And after the draft, the team's probably going to be 40 or 50% different. And, my question is, Jake, if Duke Rockne and Bill Walsh were calling plays towards the end of the season with who they had left, I don't think the outcome would have been different. But more fundamentally, I don't think it matters because it wasn't about this year. It was about establishing a program and putting together a good long-term plan.
Mike, there's no way you actually believe that, do you?
What, that they have a long-term plan?
They changed their plan a bunch of times. They said they were trying to win this year. They signed Justin Fields and gave him $30 million, and Aaron Glenn said he's going to be our guy. He's never been coached up properly. I mean, they started 0-7. When you say they tear it down to the studs, they made 2 notable trades, and their defense sucked with those guys anyway. He fired Wilkes. That was a disaster hire in the first place. I mean, if they weren't trying to win at the end of the year, why do you get rid of them?
You know what, Jake? You know what good organizations do? You know what smart people do? They react and they take advantage of opportunities. That's what Apple does, Amazon does, NVIDIA does. That's what good companies and organizations do.
Right, but should it look that bad? That's the point.
Wait, let me finish.
Bad.
So when the Jets take advantage of an opportunity that they see and make great trades for the long-term future, why don't you go by the facts and look at it and say, that's really smart, that's really thoughtful. So, no, they weren't going to win the Super Bowl this year, and they are in a much better position for the future today than they've been in a long, long time, and they didn't put a Band-Aid on it. And when you sign Justin Fields, context is everything here. You could keep saying $30 million till you're blue in the face, but the facts are that's 30 cents on the dollar to people like Kirk Cousins. It's not outcome determinative to hurting their plan in the future. If we were running a team, what I would be telling you is, of course you're going to bring in players. Obviously, every team does. But you don't want to hurt your long-term flexibility the way the Falcons did with Kirk Cousins, the way the Dolphins did with Tua. Yeah, did Justin Fields work out? Of course it didn't, Jake. And you could scream every single time, $30 million, $30 million. It doesn't stop what they want to do. And that's why context, when you talk about things, is really important, because what they have is flexibility and a tremendous opportunity to improve this roster in a very short amount of time. And that's the facts. Regardless of what you say, that's the truth, and that's the unbiased fact. They have cap room, they have draft choices, and they have flexibility that their competition doesn't have.
Okay, Yeah, I let you say your piece.
And by the way, I'll tell you this. I have talked to other owners face-to-face who are envious of the Jets' position.
800-919-3776. Let's start it off with Alex in Brooklyn, who's first this segment. Hello, Alex. You're on with Jake and Mike.
Hey, good morning, guys. Jake, huge fan. Thanks for taking the call. Mike, if you don't mind, I just want to talk to you for a second about what you're saying about Aaron Glenn and Woody Johnson. I agree in theory it makes sense what Woody Johnson's saying by committing to Aaron Glenn. You have to trust the plan and all that stuff. But I know you don't like saying anything bad about Woody, but if the Jets go out this offseason, whether they have a quarterback, whether they don't, and they win 4 games again in 2026, there's a good chance that Aaron Glenn won't be here, because I feel like Woody is going to lose patience and then, want to move off of him, even though he had a plan. So if Aaron Glenn has showed you something this year to make you confident that there is some semblance of a plan and it's working, then I understand. But at this point, he's still in hot water, and there are so many candidates available that would just be a much better option. If he's not safe anyways, wouldn't it just make more sense to make the move now instead of making it next year, and there might not be people available?
Yeah, so I guess like a good way to summarize this discussion is like both things can be true, which is you could have had a disappointing season, which certainly they did with their 1-loss record, and have a good plan moving forward. And where I give Woody credit, and look, he's made plenty of mistakes over the years. This is not like a blank check here, but saying like what I really give him credit is like he hired 2 people. He went through a process, which it's well documented, I was part of, and he made a decision to say, I believe in these 2 guys. And one of the things that good organizations do, be it in sports or otherwise, is they hire good people, they let them design a plan, and then within reason, they let them execute it. And all my point is, like, while the win-loss record last year was disappointing by any objective metrics, it's not really what you're hiring people for in terms of a long-term plan. And while it's hard to do, you do need to be patient. There are going to be growing pains. And what I would tell you based on my experience as it relates to a quarterback and where they want to play, again, both things could be true. The season didn't go well last year, but through the lens of who may want to come here, it's actually a very good situation. There's a good book called The Signal and the Noise, and there's a lot of noise, but if you look at what there's actually the pieces in place, it's actually a place where a quarterback would want to be.
Chris in Wantagh up next on New York Game Day. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Jake, Mike. Listen, Mike, I understand that, this was your business that, made the recommendation and everything, but I got to be honest. If I got hired by a former boss of mine to go hire their next savior, I'd have it in the back of my mind to give him a bad recommendation. And, Mike T, I get it. You're trying to save face that you made a good recommendation, but a lot of New York would really just respect the heck out of you if you just come clean and say you gave Woody Johnson a bad recommendation because you don't like the guy and you don't like the Jets.
Well, I appreciate the call, but our company does do consulting that's well documented, and there was a lot of people involved in the process. It was rigorous. It was multi-weeks, and again, if you look at it through year 1, has it gone perfect? No, but that's not what the plan was, and I happen to think the people that are in place are going to do a good job long term. And again, we're a few weeks away from free agency. We're 2 months away or 3 months away from the draft, and this team's going to look a lot different. And I think what they're doing isn't easy, but I think they're going to have great results long term, and we're going to find out.
Mike, here's the thing, though. A couple things can be true. Darren Muji might have a good plan, and they have all these resources, but it won't matter if your head coach is this bad and doesn't improve. Because, again, you said at the beginning of the year, if the Jets in December could beat the Jets in September, that'd be real progress. And they couldn't.
Right.
And there's no evidence that Aaron Glenn is a good coach. There's nothing he did well this year as a head coach. He brought up that they didn't have any field goals that were blocked. No, don't interrupt me after you made you tried to mock me to Jordan that I interrupted you, which I did no such thing. I let you lay out your point. Let me lay out mine. Couple things here. Over the last 25 years, because you're a data guy, from 2001 to 2025, there have been 29 first-time NFL head coaches who won 4 or fewer games in their debut season. Glenn's now part of that group. Only 2 of the 28 ever went on to win 1 playoff game or more in their careers. One of them is Zach Taylor, who has Joe Burrow, and the other is Dan Campbell, who had Ben Johnson and former number 1 pick in the draft in Jared Goff. If you look at the numbers this year, how they played at the end, which is why Woody was reportedly pissed with how they finished, they became the first team ever to lose 5 straight games by 23 or more points. They're the first team ever since this stat was being tracked to not have an interception in a single season. The quarterback decisions, disaster. Coaching staff hires, Steve Wilkes, Charles London. We have no idea about Tanner Engstrand. Disasters at this point. They went 0-6 against the AFC East, outscored by 20 points per game. It's the second worst point differential in the current division format besides the 2009 Rams who won one game. If you remove special teams and just go by DVOA, combined offense and defense, this is the third worst team since 1978 when they started keeping track of those stats. Glenn said the last 4 minutes of each half belonged to the head coach. They were a disaster in those scenarios. There was zero player development. You can't name one player that improved on this team on defense besides Sherwan Briggs. He said it was going to be all about coaching. He hyped up Will McDonald and his ability to coach him up and the rest of the other players. They had 8 of their 11 starters back from last year. He didn't know how long the game-winning field goal yardage was against the Broncos. When they started 0-7, they were trying to win. And when you tell me they tear it down to the studs, they traded 2 players who were having bad years and then immediately left, and Quinton Williams became an all-pro once again. So, yeah, they have picks. Yeah, they have cap space. But most franchises would have fired Aaron Glenn immediately after the year. The Jets didn't, and Aaron Glenn enters year 2 on the hot seat. He's got to win games. I don't care about this long-term plan. It's enough. Look at all these coaches that are immediately having success. Aaron Glenn was not bad in year 1, Mike. You need to understand this. He was historically bad. So I don't need to sit here and try and gaslight me that this is all part of the plan. It's all going to work.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me finish. I let you finish.
Wait,
so when you try and tell me that this is all going to work out, that's based on nothing.
Yeah, based on Aaron Glenn's background and track record, tell me where in his biography over the last 20 years he hasn't improved.
He's not a head coach. I don't care what he does as an assistant coach or as a coordinator. That's not a head coach. It's a totally different job.
Yeah, Jake, I couldn't disagree with you more because I've been around coaches my whole professional career, and they will tell you how hard the job is, and they'll tell you how much better they got. And I believe in Aaron Glenn. They had a bad year. You have all the stats. What I'm telling you is they have a plan. They're going to try to execute it. They'll be better, and we'll see how it goes. It doesn't matter 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins. That's the part where you and I just totally disagree. We could go through this.
Mike, you told me that we'd see progress throughout the year. We were giving Glenn credit when they won the 3 out of 5 after the 0-7 start. The reality is they have 3 wins against backup quarterbacks this year. They started with a 7-game losing streak. They beat 3 backup quarterbacks, and then they ended the year breaking an NFL record for losing 23 or more points 5 straight weeks. I can't sit here and just be positive just because they have draft picks and cap space. Not with the head coach.
I'm being honest and sober about it. I'm saying the right thing to do is exactly what they're doing. That's being honest and sober. And for a team and an organization that's been repeatedly criticized for being poorly run, terrible owner, treat people terribly, that article that came out about The Athletic, all we heard for the last 2 years, who would ever want to be there? They get Aaron Glenn, who a year ago was one of the hottest coaches, who had multiple opportunities to be a head coach someplace else, wanted to come back to the organization that he played for, hired a good, young, talented front office person, Darren Muji, and now after one bad season to pull the plug, that would be bad ownership. The fact that Woody is supporting guys that he hired with recommendations that included myself, that he made the decision on and is staying with them, that's the sign of a good, stable, long-term franchise. And if you talk to head coaches, Jake, the way I have, they will tell you it's a really hard job. And part of the thing when you hire a coach is you're hiring a mindset and someone that says, hey, here's what I did bad, here's what I could do better. Where would I be concerned? If you want to ask me that question, I would say, hey, Jake, if Aaron Glenn just came in and said, you know what, we're going to have better players, but I hired everyone perfectly, and we're going to run it back with the same staff, I would be massively concerned. When he moved on from Steve Wilkes, you think that was an easy decision or a hard decision? That's a hard decision. But he made the right one. And I've seen Aaron. I've worked with Aaron. He will do what he thinks is right for the franchise, which is a lot easier said than done. So, again, in terms of the stats, no, it wasn't good enough this year. But that's not what he was hired to do. He was hired to put a good long-term team and plan in place. And we could disagree all we want, but they have good young players. You could ignore that, and that's fine. But I think, hope, and expect it will be a better team next year than it was this year.
It better be. We all want the same thing at the end of the day. Rich Cimini will join us. He covers the Jets, of course. The latest on their D.C. search, some of the staff changes Glenn is supposed to make. We'll get into it with him next, right here on New York Game Day on 880 ESPN New York and the ESPN New York app. You who want in on the conversation on the phone lines, and the Patriots, more on those games coming up, but a bunch of you are on hold, so let's get to some calls here on New York Game Day with Jake and Mike. Let's say hello to Leo in Mass, who's first up this segment. Hello, Leo.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call. Love the show and the debate. You two are making some very compelling arguments on opposite sides of the fence, obviously. As a longtime Jets fan, I understand Woody Johnson's vision on why he hired Glenn and why he stayed in the course with him. But the early signs from AG as a program builder are not good. It goes beyond the record. He just did a poor job on every aspect of the team. I'm hopeful, and this is something I want to broach with you guys and bring up with you two. I'm hopeful that a year from now, if Aaron Glenn doesn't turn this around, that Woody Johnson sends out feelers to Curt Cignetti, because I think, and Mike T mentioned this earlier in the show, Curt Cignetti has that Bill Parcells gene of wanting to have a challenge and take on a challenge the way Parcells rebuilt the Patriots program and the Jets program in '97, which led to a lot of success until 2011. I think Curt Cignetti is the kind of guy that Woody Johnson needs to send out feelers to. If a year from now Glenn doesn't lead a turnaround or show positive signs, I think that's the type of coach and program builder the Jets need to change a franchise that's probably the worst in pro sports right now.
Leo, appreciate the call. Mike, in a scenario where Cignetti would be interested in the job a year from now, what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I appreciate the caller. I mentioned that to somebody off air this week, Jake, that Curt Cignetti reminds me of Parcells and Belichick in a way that, most of us go through life and say we don't care what other people think of us, and yet we really do. Like Parcells, Belichick, Cignetti, like those are like some of the rarest people where they really don't care. And I do think, even though the data is overwhelmingly against Cignetti being successful in the NFL, I actually think he would be, because I think the way college football is now, it's harder in some ways because you have free agency literally every year. So if I was the Raiders, I'd talk to him this year. I think he has a chance to be really good. And when you turn around a program that has won in 120 years, like, there's something special there. So pro football players gravitate to coaches who make them better because it can make them more money. So I don't think it's a Jet-specific discussion because, as we know, like a year – like, look, Jake, if the three of us were having a conversation a week ago, we wouldn't even say Baltimore and Miami were open, so let alone a year from now. But I think Cignetti's a really interesting guy.
Totally agree. Let's say hello to Tony in New Jersey, who's up next on New York Game Day. Hello, Tony.
How you doing, Jake? Can you hear me?
We got you, Tony.
Yeah, I just got to say, you need to be like a kindergarten teacher or something. The patience you're showing in these conversations is crazy because, like, I'm a Giants fan. And, Mike, with all due respect, like, when you say, like, oh, I've had the experience with it, the experience back then and now are very different. Like, the Jets are in a disarray. The whole franchise is up in arms. The fans are over it. And I'm a Giant fan looking in. Jake, I just got to say, God bless you, man.
Well, Tony, I appreciate it. There's no such thing as a bandwagon Jets fan, Mike. I mean, that is for sure. We are a different breed. Let's keep the calls rolling here. Let's say hello to Jeff in Delray Beach. He's up next on New York Game Day. What's up, Jeff?
Good morning, fellas. Great show, great dialogue here. I'm a Jet fan my whole life. I'm turning 66. So obviously I saw the highest high in 69. I've seen a ton of lows, and I've seen one bad head coaching choice after another, after another, after another. We don't need to go through the list. We know those names very well. Jake, all the points you made to dismiss Aaron Glenn immediately, or 1,000% on point. Mike T, I love you. I respect you. I listen to you all the time. I watch you all the time. But I got to tell you, it's one thing if the team has a poor record in year one with a head coach, and then they show signs. Maybe they win a couple games at the end of the season. Maybe they show they're playing hard for their coach. We've all seen that kind of scenario, which causes you to bring the coach back. I never could imagine I would have seen a lower low with a head coach than this head coach. He failed, as Jake laid out, in every conceivable manner. I mean, it wasn't even close from his initial press conferences. Every decision he made, every hire he made, he wasn't bad, Mike. He was beyond atrocious. And, you take the power, you give him another year and we'll see what happens. It's very rare that you get really phenomenal choices available. It doesn't happen that often. You had Vrabel available. I think the Jets interviewed him. You would know better than me.
Did.
They could have hired.
We did.
Yeah, okay, so they could have hired. They could have hired a real head coach there. Number one, and number two, blocked him from being the Patriots head coach.
He wasn't going to take that job, though, Jeff. You got to be fair.
He wasn't? Okay.
The second
fair enough,
the Patriot job opens, you're not going to get Mike Vrabel.
Fair enough. Well, but didn't the Jets interview him, though, before the Patriot job opened?
They did, and then Gerard Mayer was fired, and New England hired him.
Okay, well, okay, so put that aside. You now have names like Harbaugh, Stefanski. These people like this don't come around that often. We have no idea who's going to be around next year. As far as I'm concerned, guys, Glenn does not deserve the right to come back. How he ultimately failed in every conceivable regard. If whatever the scorecard is, F- would be too good for what he did. I've seen it all, and I never could imagine I would have seen it this low. So, Mike, I got to agree with Jake. My Jet fan pals that I know for 60 years, going back to Shea Stadium all the way through to today, we all agree. We're all upset. Woody makes one bad decision after another. If he would have cut ties now, he would have made the right decision and hired a real head coach, not another coordinator who failed, but a real head coach. So let's hope for the best, but that's my view of it, fellas.
Jeff, appreciate the call. 800-919-3776. Mike, I think the biggest issue the Jet fan has going forward with this coach is that there's really just nothing to grab onto that you feel like he does well as a coach. That's what I keep coming back to. Like, what is Aaron Glenn's expertise that could give any Jet fan confidence in the direction going forward? Again, we know they have the draft picks. We know they have the salary cap space. But there was just nothing that I could grab onto that I could highlight and say, well, at least we have this. He has experience here, or he's excellent on this side of the ball here. I think that's the big problem. There's just nothing any of us could point to that we could sit here and say he actually does well as an NFL head coach.
Yeah, and again, like, this is where I think we fundamentally see it differently. Like, this sounds a little counterintuitive, but like the head coach position in itself is a developmental position. I would tell you firsthand, I was the assistant GM of the Jets for 5 years, and when I got the job, now we had success in year one. We won 10 games, but that's because Eric Mangini did a really good job. But if I had to grade myself after year one, it would have been a very low grade. I don't think I did a good job. It took me, Jake, like candidly, like probably a year and a half to feel comfortable running the organization, and I had been the assistant GM in the building for 5 years. So my point is, like, if Aaron Glenn was in this conversation, like, I think the most important aspect is, like, he would say the same thing. Like, he made a lot of mistakes. He could have done things better, and that's why, like, I'm optimistic about. I know his ability, and I know what he's made out of. Like, he's job, and there's areas to improve. Like, that's, to me, like, the most fundamental part of it. And I think, again, where this organization's been so criticized in the past for not having stability, not being long-term, like, here's the opportunity to do that. Like, yes, like, it wasn't good enough. Yes, statistically, it wasn't good. But there's good pieces in place at positions that are hard to find, specifically at tackle, offensive tackle, 2 of them. And to me, he should and will be better next year. And if you interviewed Aaron Glenn, like, he's not going to sit here and say that he can't be a lot better. And that's, like, a big part of this discussion is, can he be better? Can he grow into being a really good head coach? And, only time will tell. But, like, I do know the guy, and I do know how important it is. I know how hard he works. And I'm confident that he's already doing those things, 1 week after the season ended.